code memorized. If there's something else in here that somebody knows, I'm more than willing to look at it. You know, the chairman asked me to look for what I could look for, and I'm looking. I went to the special exception, and the special exception issued by the Board of Zoning Appeals only allows them 25% reduction or 33% reduction. They won't get to 10 feet. The special exception law allows a reduction of the offset, but not that far. And then Jamie asked me whether they could get a variance, and I said, I don't think so. They've got acres and acres. They can put this building anywhere. They just want this building here. And they have lots of good reasons why they want the building here, but it ain't gonna make a hardship or a practical difficulty under the law. Because they could take out other fields and put the building somewhere else and not be anywhere near the wetland, right? So I don't know how the zoning board of appeals can find a hardship or a variance.
One of those in our special exception section says that you don't have to show a hardship or variance.
That's correct, but they'll only get, they don't get to the whole
30 foot.
They can't get the whole 10 feet. So then Jamie asked me whether they could apply for a variance, and I said, yeah, but under the law, they won't get it. This is self-imposed. They've picked this spot. I mean, under the law, I don't know how they would get it. So they can get a 25% reduction without showing a hardship under a special exception, but that's not enough. I mean, they would be able to reduce the building less, but they wouldn't be able to, you know.
Is that an option?
Is one an option?
Reduce the size of the building.
We already did. Yeah, we're not gonna shrink it anymore.
It seems like the three options that we have moving forward is, one is that they'd have to go back to the DNR, the Army Corps of Engineers, and request an additional fill to meet the 30-foot. Two is to make the building smaller, or three is that the town amends the ordinance.
And there is a fourth option, and that's we table it for tonight, and we research it further and see if we can find out whether there's something else in the code that allows it. We just can't find it in the many pages that we have here. If past town boards have done this, maybe in the minutes of those meetings, we can find how they did it. Understand what I mean? Chris, I mean, your question and the engineer's answer was very helpful on the conservancy line issue. That the conservancy line is not a map. If this was a zoning mapped wetland, we'd have another problem.
Yeah.
But this is a practical wetland, it's a mapped wetland, and we go by that, and that's very common, so that's great, so we don't have to do a rezoning. But we can continue to look and see if we can find a solution, and at least, if we find out how the DNR does it, maybe we can find out how we can do it. Does that make sense? That's the only reason I wasn't trying to quiz anybody to the extent of, you know, they may have a provision. If they have a specific provision, then we have to look for the same provision, right?
In your DNR approval, was there anything in there that stated how they got to that? How they got to the exception of their 30-foot rule?
You had to work with them to minimize the wetland. So it was a narrower road, it was a smaller building, it was a shifted building to the point of where you can't shift it or turn it or twist it any longer.
I understand, but we're trying to get to a point where, to find out how they got past their 30-foot rule, and how do they get an exception for that, so that we can look in the same
They don't
direction.
have a 30-foot rule.
Well, according to Engineer Janelli, they do.
That's what the permit is for, to go into that. It's cut and dry. We're micromanaging the heck out of it is what we're doing. I mean, like I said, this has been an 8-month approval. We turned the stuff in 3 weeks ago, and now we have to go look to see how they did it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's got to be satisfied. You got to satisfy the code now.
Well, then it should have been done at staff when we turned the stuff in 3 weeks ago. It should have been looked into. We've had many meetings since we've turned this stuff in, and this has never been brought up to this degree.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
question, I guess I'll direct this to Attorney Macy. This is on our agenda for discussion and possible action if the Plan Commission were of a mind to sort of take the, I think, last suggestion that you had, that take some time and research this and find out what we might find. Am I correct, we're not compelled to act on this tonight in any manner?
You're not compelled to act on it tonight, that's correct.
Okay, and we're not under any, other than I know the applicant is anxious, we're not under any time constraints or restrictions or impositions?
Well, the court says you have to act on an application within a reasonable time, and reasonable time could be 6 months or a year in certain instances.
Okay. Well, I guess it would be my suggestion that we do not take action on this matter tonight until we get some clearer vision on these issues before us. And I'm not making that in the form of a motion, it's simply a suggestion that we not act on it tonight.
Second.
No, that wasn't a motion.
That was
He said it was not a motion.
To assist these gentlemen, before you make a motion, because once a motion is made, theoretically, Mr. Chairman, you're not supposed to take any further discussion on this. I'd like to walk through, by going around the table, the other policy decisions that need to be made. And so, could we just start at one end, and I don't care which end you start at, and just, does everybody find the uses that proposed, I'm in the town policy issue on page 2 of the report? You could go to your report. Questions have been made, and I just want to, and we're going to go around the table, we're not going to take the vote necessarily, maybe you will, but that's up to you, but does everyone find the uses that they're proposing to use for meet to the P1 district? I know you've already stated yes. Yes. Okay, so there's no question of the uses, and I don't think the citizens have necessarily raised an objection to the uses, but I'm bringing this up only because your planner brought it up, okay? Right? The next one is the panel. And are you willing to say, or do they need to bring back a different facade? That's a policy decision. You're going to be making, when you vote, be it tonight or any other time, you're going to be voting that this is an appropriate finished facade. And I'm just telling you, and you already heard me say it and you know it, that means anybody else who brings in this facade will be meeting your 50% rule. It's a very important decision. I mean, and it doesn't do them any good if you're going to table it just to research the shoreline, the conservancy issue, not to know where you're at on the facade issue. Fair enough?
Yes.
And so,
Yes,
you think it meets the...
I do.
Good.
Yes.
I've seen enough of that type of finished material in newer buildings. You could look downtown Waukesha, the newest apartments that are there are largely metal buildings. I don't have a problem with that.
I told them from the get-go that I didn't think it was the most aesthetic building, but I think it serves the purpose for this facility.
Unfortunately, Chief, that's not going to cut the mustard legally, because whether this building is on the corner of 164 and 59, or this building is tucked away, you would have to approve this same material for that building. So I just need to tell you that. I mean, and the other three have said they find this material to be fine. If anybody walks in a location and has a 100% building with this material on, I'm going to tell you legally, you've made a decision tonight that that material is fine. And that's fine, I'm not being critical, I'm just saying you need to know the import of this decision.
But then I'm sorry. I have a question in that. You mean that we can't, as a board, this building is not really next to anybody other than open ground. It has no, if we, in any other condition, if somebody came in and wanted to use this material, we couldn't make them change the use and how they use the material?
If I'm correct, if I'm reading the planner's report properly, you're making a finding that at least 50% of the exterior of this building has a finished facade. That material is a finished facade.
I understand that, but I'm looking ahead because I think that's the threat here. You're saying that if somebody comes in 3 years from now and they're located on a corner with abutting 3 properties or in a very active area, that we as a board, because we've done this in the past, we've made people enhance the exterior of the building.
And it's one type of finished facade. We could require that the finished facade on the corner of Sunset and Genesee Road is brick.
Well, I can look up the code, but and I'll defer to the planner. The planner paraphrased that it has to be 50% either brick, decorative masonry, glass panel, EFIC, or other appropriate finished facade. You're making the decision that you're not going to require brick, decorative masonry, that this meets the requirement. How do you say it meets the requirement for this guy as a finished facade for this building, but not another building? That's not the issue.
my point. I guess I'm not asking it properly. This doesn't, if that was all canvas, nobody, it would hurt nobody. The use would be okay. Now, if that was next to 2 or 3 homes or next to another building that was enhanced, then we as a board would never have a right to tell that guy to improve the look of the building? We've done it all for years.
You can negotiate with them, you can talk to them, you can ask them to put in windows. I see plan commissioners do it every month. But if they meet the code, you can't require more than the code. You can ask them, but you can't require more than the code requires. Fair enough?
I'm sorry, now I'm kind of confused. I thought if you listed the brick, you list this, you're allowed to have one or the other for each building. Now, we're going to set a precedence here from now on, every building's going to be steel.
It's meeting, you're saying this building meets the requirements. So if I'm a builder and I want to build in another location, and I come in and look at these minutes and I'll say, and Jamie, does it read differently than you paraphrased it?
I apologize, Attorney Macy, but I disagree with you. I think that the Plan Commission and the board, and I've seen it in other communities with design standards, it's at the discretion to take into consideration the location.
Is that what the code says?
That's how I interpret the code.
I'm just telling you guys that you're not going to win in court if you decide that if they come in with a building that's 50% brick and you want 100% brick, you're not going to win. So now extrapolate that same thinking.
If I could just weigh in for a minute, the words of this, we could look at the rest of it. It says other appropriate finished facade. Do we not have some discretion as to decide what is appropriate in a particular situation or condition? I mean, I thought that's what architectural review boards are all about. I think the word appropriate, to me, the interpretation says that we can consider context and site location. That's my interpretation.
Keep in mind it is a concealed fastener architectural metal panel. It's not the old lap screw.
I think on any project that I've ever done, the Plan Commission has always had the opportunity to review the materials that I've used and suggested something else or more of a masonry product or a ethos product. And I think it's been up to the Plan Commission's discretion. I respectfully disagree.
It's just not, I don't have the whole code up here. I'll look at the whole code, but that, from what I'm reading here, they have a requirement to meet 50% of either brick, decorative masonry, glass panel, EFSI, or appropriate finished facade. And when you make the determination that it's appropriate, why isn't it appropriate? Because you're going to say because it's a different location?
Certainly, absolutely.
All right.
If you're on the corner of Sunset and Genesee Road, which is a hallmark rather than buried into a ball field or a park, I think that's an entirely different approach.
I understand what you're saying. I don't believe that's what a court would say, but, and I know what plan commissions do. I sit at hundreds of plan commission meetings. They get the best building they can get out of you, don't they?
Yes.
Thank you.
How about on to number 3?
Number 3, there's already been questions about the landscaping, and I'm not, I mean, apparently, some have stated they think there's not enough landscaping, and so if that's the consensus, is you want a new landscaping plan, you should tell them. If the landscaping's adequate, you should tell them.
I think that's something that can be reviewed with staff and satisfy staff's requirements. Jamie, would you be okay with that?
Well, because we're tabling it tonight, they'll have ample time to put together a new landscape plan and bring it back before the plan commission, so.
What is the pleasure of the board?
I agree. Oh, all right. I move that we table it and give them a chance to get the ducks in line.
Is there a second? All in favor?